Hi guys, welcome back to my channel and welcome if you're new. I'm Nika and I make book related videos, and as you can see, today we're going to be talking about all the books I read in April. April was quite a happening month. I believe I read 19 books, which I think is the most that I've read ever in this whole year so far. So without further ado, we're going to dive right in because I think this video is going to be quite long, but I'll try to wrap it up quickly and speak mostly about the books that I actually enjoyed. So first up, I'm gonna share with you all the graphic novels that I read. In April, I ended up reading 5 graphic novels, which was quite enjoyable for me. So I was traveling quite a bit in April. So on the flight and everything, those were the books that really gave me company, and I am really happy. So I picked up the Saga series, which I have always wanted to read, and I've always seen such good things, heard such good things about it, so it was finally time that I picked it up. This is also around the time when I got my Scribd membership. So basically on Scribd, Saga is available. I think the first six volumes, 6 or 5, something like that. So I read one after the other, and it was quite an enjoyable read. Basically the premise is that we have 2 people, and both of them belong to 2 different, let's say, warring sections in society. It's an intergalactic tale. So we have, I think, the guy is from the moon and the woman is from the planet. So the planet is at war against their moon. So they're basically 2 star-crossed lovers. He used to be her prisoner, but then they fall in love and everything, and now they have a child. So this is the main issue. The headquarters, the people in power of both sections don't want this knowledge to come out that these 2 enemies have seemingly gotten together and they've made a child and all of that. So the whole series basically follows them trying to escape from these people who are after them. I think it has amazing graphics. It's amazing, the art and everything. And I think the first 4 books follow the first 3 years of the kids' lives. So that, and it does span quite a bit of time, and there are many amazing characters. We get introduced to the friends, the mother of the guy, his father as well. There are some cute side characters. There are some villains who are not really villains, so you also get to see a lot of grey characters, which is generally, I would say, the norm nowadays in writing the anti-hero tale. So all of that, I think it was a really enjoyable book series, graphic novel series, and you can definitely give it a try. It is available on Scribd, and that is where I read it, and I would definitely recommend. I rated this whole series, the first 4 books at least, 5 out of 5 stars. Then the 5th graphic novel that I read was I Will Judge You by Your Bookshelf by Grant Snyder. So it doesn't really follow a plot line. It's basically different pages show the different ways of life that a book lover, a book reader has. So maybe one page will be about a book reader just going about his day, trying to read in however much of time he gets, in pockets of time and everything. Bookshelf pictures, it's all different panels of different arts and everything, and I really enjoyed it. This was also another book that I read on one of my flights back and forth, and I really enjoyed it. This was also a very quick read because, like I said, it's not really a plot, it's a collection of art, so it's more so a sketchbook. Definitely enjoyed it, and I would recommend it to you all. So moving on, I also ended up reading one classic, and this one was a reread for me. So I read Daddy Long Legs by Jean Webster in April, and I think this was my maybe 2nd or 3rd time reading it. I was really in the mood to read something sweet, nostalgic, that had some form of epistolary. Epistolary means basically a novel that is written by a letter. So I was in the mood for that, and this book just came to mind. I really enjoyed it the first time I read it, so I thought that I should definitely give it a reread. And that said, it's also a very short book, and it's also available for free on Amazon because it's past that particular timeline, so it's available. It's in the general database now, and copyrights and all don't exist, I believe. So I read Daddy Long Legs by Jean Webster. In this book, we basically follow this girl called Jerusha Abbott, who is in an orphanage I think she's 16 or 17, and she's finally adopted by this anonymous person. Not really adopted, but this anonymous person is going to sponsor her education and everything. So she calls him Daddy Longlegs after the spider, because the only knowledge she has of him is, he once came to her orphanage and she saw his shadow on the wall, and because of the angle of the lights and everything, it appeared that he had really long legs. So that is how she nicknames him Daddy Longlegs. And basically his stipulations are, I'll support you for college and everything. The only condition is that you'll have to write me letters in like a particular interval, give me updates about your studies and all of that. They communicate only via letters and everything. So it's really interesting, and I really enjoyed it. There's also a love angle, but even apart from that, it's sort of Bildungsroman, so it's her growing up. And I really love reading books set in boarding schools where people are growing up, they're learning and all of that. So really enjoyed it, and I would definitely recommend it. I rated it 4 out of 5 stars. Then moving on, I also did pick up one adult fantasy, and it was Hellbent by Lee Bardugo. Now this one was a review copy that was sent to me by the publishers, and I'm very thankful to them for that. This is book 2 in the 9th House series or trilogy. I'm not sure how many books there are going to be in this series, but it's book 2 basically, Hellbent. So in 9th House we basically follow a character called Alex Stern. She has the ability to see ghosts, and so she is basically her education is sponsored at this university, and her main duty is that she is a member of this house called Lathe, the duty of which is to ensure that all the other clubs, secret societies, do not misuse their power. So there is a lot of magic involved in this whole secret societies within the campus, within the university. So I really love that factor. It's dark academia through and through, but it also has that spark of fantasy. That said, it is adult fantasy, so there is a lot of, let's say, gory elements to it. In Hellbent we follow the events directly after the story ends, how the story ends in 9th House, and we have Alex trying to bring back a certain person from hell, you could say. So it has a lot of back and forth. There's a lot of new alliances that are formed. There's a lot of research done as to how they can go forth and bring back this person from hell. So it was quite interesting. However, at one point I was like, these people are trying and failing. At what point it got too much. I felt like, okay, this time if they're not going to succeed, I am so done with this book, because there's a certain bit in the middle where I felt like it was stretched too much, the storyline. But yeah, at the end it did turn out the way I wanted to. But although it does not end on a cliffhanger, it kind of does, because you now are really eager. I know I am eager to see how the story will pan out in the next installment in this series. So that's that, because certain dynamics have changed. So it's going to be interesting to see how these dynamics pan out between the characters and amongst the various other characters as well. There's also some social issues that are brought up in terms of race and everything. These are systematic colonization of race by these institutions of education, which are essentially wide and full of privilege and power. So all of that was a very interesting read, and I rated Hellbent a 4 out of 5 stars. So let us now talk about the different and many, I think 12 romance books that I read. So the first series that I'm going to talk about is the Sinner series by Michelle Hurd. Now this is basically a collection of 5 interconnected standalones. So in each book we follow a different couple, a different member of the society that they have. So the basic premise is that there is this group of mafia leaders from all over the world, and they call themselves the priesthood, I believe. So we have 5 books. So we have one member from each of the different sections. We've got the Russian mafia, we've got the Italian mafia, we've got the Boston mafia, I think. So it's one from every 5 different families, I believe. So I first actually picked up book 2 in this series, which is Owned by a Sinner. And let me just begin by saying that I actually really enjoyed this series. I think Owned by a Sinner is probably the softest of all the 5 books, because the romance is very sweet. So we have this girl called, actually have forgotten their names. So this one is the Irish mafia. So we've got this girl, and she is working for businessman called Liam, and for the longest time she does not know that he's actually a member of the Irish mafia. Her father was also a member of this mafia, and he's always tried to keep her away from this side of things. She never knows about this unless it's too late. So here's a synopsis. All I want to do is look after my dad, so when I land the job of a lifetime that will take care of our expenses, I grab at the chance with both hands. Little do I know the impossible will be expected of me. Slowly my smile fades and my laughter dies until all that's left is a broken puppet of my personal hell created. Liam Byrne, the head of the Irish mafia, returns from a business trip, and I expect my hellish nightmare to increase tenfold. Brutal, merciless and dangerous, Liam is feared by all, even the monster intent on killing my soul. Turns out I was wrong. The instant Liam notices what's happening, he takes me under his wing, and even though he's all sharp edges and threatening growls, I feel safe with him. Little by little, my sunshine creeps through the cracks and my laughter returns. But can one monster really defeat another? Or am I just a girl dreaming about the impossible? So this one was a really interesting novel. He's very strong and scary for the world, but for her he is very soft and everything, which is a trope that I really like in this book. And he's also very protective of her and everything. He really saves her from a sort of abuse that she was facing and everything, and he's always there for her. He's helping her. So in that sense, it's not a very dark romance, even though there's elements of mafia involved in this book, but this one was considerably really soft, I have to say. I think this was the most softest from all the books in the series. So this one was book 2 in the Sinner series, and I rated it 4 out of 5 stars. Then, because I came to know that this is a whole series, I decided to go back and do my research and pick up book 1, and book 1 is Taken by a Sinner. So basically what happens is that we have this heroine. This one is kind of like a step-brother romance. So basically we have the heroine who really wants to be a movie producer, and what happens is that her mother marries a retired godfather of the Greek mafia, yes. And then this man has retired and his son has taken over. His name is Nicholas, and then basically now Nicholas is involved in every aspect of her life. He's trying to find her a person who she can marry, so that basically political ties and everything are maintained. But then when it actually comes to her marrying someone, he is unwilling to do that, and he ends up marrying her himself. So a lot of the book is them trying to find a common ground between both, because they both have very strong personalities, and she really resists his attempts at controlling her life and the way her life has suddenly changed because of the fact that her mother has now married into the mafia, all of that. So now this one is more darker than book 2, which was owned by a sinner, because of the such strong personalities that both these characters have, Nicholas and our heroine here. So yeah, keep that in mind. It's interesting, and it really sets the premise for the rest of the novels, because you are also introduced to the other mafia heads that will eventually get their own stories in the rest of the books. So Taken by a Sinner was a 4-star read for me. Then moving on, I read the third book in the series, which is Stolen by a Sinner. Now, Stolen by a Sinner is book 3 in the Sinner series, and it follows Gabriel, who is the head of the Turkish mafia. So what happens is that the basic premise is that he attacks his enemy, that's the Polish group, and then from there he kidnaps, or like he actually shoots a girl, and then because she's not yet dead, he takes her to his house, and then he tries to interrogate her and get to know about the whole background. And because he keeps her in his house, she becomes close to his maid, his mother, and his grandmother, and all of that. So this one was also a very nice romance. He had his doubts about her in the beginning, but then slowly all of that turns to nothing basically, and romance blooms between them. This one was again another interesting read, but it had some sort of but quite a bit of abuse involved in it. That the female main character and her mother had to go through at the hands of the Polish group. So keep that in mind going into it, because it was quite it came off quite strong, so it was a bit too much for me at some points, and that is why I rated this book of 3 out of 5 stars actually, because I couldn't compare the joy that I got from reading this book to the actual joy that I got reading the first 2 books. So yeah, Stolen by a Sinner was a 3-star read for me. Then I read book 4 in the Sinner series, which is Chosen by a Sinner, and in this book we follow Luca, who is the head of the Italian mafia. So basically what happens is that he knows this girl who is sort of like friend to who's other's best friend, who's the head of the Russian mafia, whose story will follow in the 5th book basically. So Luca knows this girl and everything, and she has always had the hots for him, but then what happens is that one weekend when it's her birthday, they all go to Vegas, they get drunk, she gets drunk, and they end up marrying. So she's married to Luca Cotroni, and she is kind of hesitant because although she likes him, she is unsure about whether he likes her or not, and she's unwilling to be in such a situation. But then when they come back home, all the elders decide that maybe it's best for them to remain married for the time being and see how it goes. So it's that basically it's them navigating their relationship, which basically started off on an unconscious note, you could say, because they were drunk and didn't really know what their actions were. So the romance blossoms from there. And now this one, because the girl is also a member of the Bratva, she's a Bratva princess, so there's a lot of fights, a lot of action that you see in this book. And comparatively, amongst at least these 4 books that I've read so far, there's a lot of action involved. There's a lot of gore also involved, so go in knowing that, because she has to go through some stuff in the middle. So that's that. This was book 4 in the Sinner series, and I rated it 4 stars. Now the only book that I have to read in this series is book 5, which is Captured by a Sinner, which I'll probably read next month maybe. So those are all the 4 books I read in the whole Sinner series, and I really enjoyed it. Overall this series is quite enjoyable, and I would definitely recommend you pick these up and have a good time reading these. Then I read a couple of, let's say, mediocre romances as well, so I'm not going to dive more into them because I actually wouldn't recommend them to you all, but for the sake of this video I'm going to share what they are with you all. So I read Alpha Villain by Liliana Carlyle, and I rated it 2 stars. Then I read Her Billionaire Stalker by Emma Bray, which I also rated 2 stars. Then I read Rural Romance by Alexa Riley, which I rated another 2 stars. Moving on, I have read another romance novel that I want to share with you all, and this is called Triple Duty Bodyguards by Lily Gold. So basically what happens is that in this book we have this, I think, film star, and she is being stalked really bad. So her team members finally bring in this group of elite soldiers who were soldiers and now work in private security, and so she has this group of 3 bodyguards around her. And this is a reverse harem book, so basically it means you've got 1 girl and 3 male love interests. So it was really nice getting to see their personalities, because this book does deal a lot with how do I explain this, with managing the dynamics that can arise in such a relationship where there are 4 people, and when all of them have such strong personalities. So we've got different personalities in the 3 guys, and we've got just a headstrong girl, a film star, who is really committed to her job, who wants to do her job, but at the same time she has this issue of the stalker who is going to do anything to get her. So it's that. The smut was quite interesting in this book, so if that's what you're looking for, you can definitely go in with this book. I really did enjoy the book, because with these 3 guys it's like you're getting a mix of everything. One guy is very nice and soft, with one guy you'll get the whole dom vibes, and then with another guy we've got a mix of both. So it was really, really interesting, and I believe I would definitely recommend it. That said, I rated it 3 stars. Then I also read Cardinal Urges by J.T. Gessinger. I'm really sorry if I mispronounced that name. So this was another mafia romance, and in this book basically we follow this mafia, I think he's a member of the Irish mafia. he captures this girl because he believes she has knowledge of the Russians and everything, and then something happens. And to be very honest, this was a very character driven novel, I think. So it's been quite some time since I read it. I binged it actually, so I'm not really sure I remember a lot about this book, but it's basically that there's kidnapping involved, and then she gets on his nerve because she's very bubbly, she's also quite sassy, and then slowly we get to see his fun, sarcastic side come out. So it was really funny. The book has got quite the bit of banter as well, which I enjoyed. And the emotional aspect was also revealed slowly throughout, so that's something you can definitely check out as well. I would recommend in this book. However, that said, I rated it 3 out of 5 stars. Then I read another Alexa Riley, and this one is called The Runaway Mail Order Bride, and basically follow this girl who, she's in such a position in her life that she has no other option but to go to this mail order bride agency and then get shipped to a random guy who she can marry. And then on the other hand, we have this guy who just believes he should be in a marriage of convenience, so that it's convenient for him, so that he can settle down without expecting any romance or love. But then none of these people expect any romance, but of course, since this is a romance novel, you can expect love to bloom. So that's the basic premise of the book, and I rated it 3 out of 5 stars. Moving on, let's talk about my 4-star romance reads. I read Tease by Melanie Harlow, which is basically a friends to lovers situation. So we've got these two best friends, and the guy is like this really rich, but an introverted guy who's working in software. I believe he's an engineer of some sort, maybe, but he's definitely in software, I think, Bitcoin or something like that. And we've got the girl who is, I believe, a baker, and they have this big get together ceremony coming up of their back when they were in college and everything, in school. And so she is really afraid to go because she knows that she'll have to socialize a lot with the people. She's also an introvert, so she goes there and she really feels very awkward and weird. And then there's this queen bee, mean girl there, who's like showing off her new fiance, who's apparently very rich and everything, and it really gets on the nerves of our female main character. And so suddenly she just ends up saying, oh, don't you know, I'm engaged to the male character, and we are about to be married and everything. And this queen bee is like, oh really, because he's much richer than her fiance and everything. And then she's like, okay, why don't you invite him to this get together as well? And she does. Our main character, female main character, does. She sends him a text, and they're best friends really, so he does show up for her. And then from there the lie explodes. The next morning, because of some issues, I think she ends up staying at his place, and then the next morning his mother comes in, the sister and everything, and they're like, oh, why didn't you tell us you guys are engaged? Because the queen bee has spilled the beans basically to everyone. So the story starts from there. They get ready for a marriage of convenience, a fake marriage, fake dating scenario, and it escalates until they actually fall in love. So this was quite a fun read, Tease. I really enjoyed it. It really I think this is one of the first books I read where I've seen the male guy be this introverted. I generally have seen or read about male leads who are very, if not outgoing, social, then at least who are confident and everything. But this was not this case, and it was interesting to see that aspect in romance as well. So like I said, I rated it a 4 stars. The last book that I'm going to talk about today is The Sweetest Oblivion by Danielle Laurie, and this was my second time reading it. So basically in this book we follow, again, mafia romance. I think this month was a month of me just reading a lot of mafia romance. So basically we follow this girl called Sweet Abeli. Everybody calls her Sweet Abeli because she's very nice and she's very sweet. And then her sister is supposed to marry this mafia guy, I think. Yeah, and he's called Nicholas Russo. This is set in New York. So her sister is supposed to marry this guy, but then she starts getting close to this guy, and she starts getting feelings that you should definitely not get for your future brother-in-law. Things escalate from there, and then it is she who ends up marrying him. And basically they have their ups and downs. And I mean, look, I think you have realized by now that I only ever read happily ever after. So of course they end up happily ever after together. It's a happily ever after book. I feel I cannot read romances where they do not end up together, or it's not a happily ever after. One person dies. I cannot read books of those type. So you've got it by now. They end up together. They end up in love. Love blossoms. But basically, for romance novels of this type, it's basically the journey that matters of them reaching that happily ever after, which really intrigues me. So this was another interesting book, and I rated it a 4 stars, I believe. Let me check. Yeah, I rated this 4 out of 5 stars. So yeah, that's it for all of the books that I read in April. I tried to keep it short because I feel like sometimes with romance novels you read 2 types of romance novels. One, which are really good, and some romance novels like novellas, really, they are really quick and really mindless, just to pass the time. They don't have a lot of plot line, they don't have a lot of character depth. So I generally read a mix of both, and that is why I try to skip over the latter kind in these wrap up, because I feel like they are just books that I read for fun, like really mindless fun, and those are not books that I would recommend to you all unless you actually go and seek those out on your own. The books that I recommend to you all, even if they are romance, are generally ones that are full length novels and have some substance in them. They're not very shallow or superficial. So that's that. I hope you enjoyed this video. I'll see you again sometime soon, and if you have read any of these books, don't forget to let me know what you thought about them, and if you have any book recommendations for me as well based on what you've seen my taste to be, then definitely leave those in the comments down below, and I'll see you again very soon. Until then, take care and peace out. Bye.